Hey there, welcome to another audio demo of A Hero's Call. This time we're going to be taking a listen to just some stuff about equipping gear and the different stats on items and how we manage all of that. We've had a change of scenery. We're hanging out in a nice campsite in some abandoned mines. You hear a lovely crackling fire off to my left, and if you listen carefully, some not so lovely flies buzzing off to my right. That would be a pile of garbage, literally. So let's get right to it. I'm going to hit Control E to open our equip menu, and this is where we actually control what gear is being held, worn, carried by our party. So here we go.
Merlin's equipment sheet semi head slot.
And it puts me on Merlin, who's my mage character I'm playing. And it says head slot. It didn't announce an item, so that means he's not wearing anything on his head. And if I just arrow down, it'll take me through a list of his equip slots and tell me what, if anything, is equipped to those slots.
Sorcerer's robe and body slot.
So he has a robe.
Leg slot.
Nothing on his legs.
Fine steel dagger in main hand slot.
He's wielding a dagger.
Sorcerer's staff in off hand slot.
Holding a staff in his other hand.
Initiate's amulet in amulet slot. Initiate's ring of vitality in ring 1 slot. Sorcerer's ring of shielding in ring 2 slot.
And you have the amulet and 2 ring slots where your magical items are going to be equipped. Okay, hit home to go back up to the top.
Head slot.
And then if I want to check out the other units in my party, I just tab to go to other characters' pages. So tab.
Gwen at Beyond's equipment sheet semi head slot.
That puts me in Gwen's sheet. And the latest addition to my party
Simeon's equipment sheet semi head slot.
is Simeon, our not-so-friendly neighborhood thief. He's pretty friendly, actually, for a thief. Anyway, I'm going to shift-tab back to Gwen.
Gwen at Beyond's equipment sheet semi head slot.
So every item has a number of different stats that we need to be aware of. And as with most of the menus, sort of universally, we can get information about the stats of the selected item or highlighted item by using the number keys. So I'm going to go down to the first item.
Equals ranger's cures in body slot.
The cure she's wearing in her or on her body, in her body slot, whatever you want to say. If I hit 1, that's going to tell me its general offensive or defensive stats. Since this is armor, it's going to say
armor rating 15.
Armor rating of 15. Now, worth noting, there's also Magico Defense. I'm going to tab over to Merlin.
Merlin's equipment sheet semi sorcerer's robe and body slot.
And learn about his robe.
Magic defense rating 23. Armor rating 9.
So there's a magic defense rating and an armor rating. And of course the magic defense rating is much higher. Robes are good against spells, not so good against blades. But what else can we learn about this gear? Pressing 2 gives us the weight.
Weight light.
And for these robes, it's light. Now we'll get into weight a little bit more later, but basically the heavier your gear is, the slower you are in combat, and that affects how quickly you can act. It affects how hard or easy you are to hit. Yeah. Let's see. 3 is going to give us the value of the item.
Value 473.
And that's a base value, you know, how much you sell it for, how much you buy it for. That's going to be modified by a number of things. The shopkeeper's attitude towards you based on quests you've done, and then just that shopkeeper's general rates. But that lets you at least know the relative value of the item. Now 4 is going to tell you any special effects of that item, any special bonuses or penalties or anything like that.
Fortifies units mana by 60 points.
So this tells us that it fortifies our mana, meaning we can cast more spells, which is always a good thing. And then last but not least, if we hit 5,
does not restrict magic.
We're told it does not restrict magic. If we go over to Gwen again.
Gwen at Beyond's equipment sheet semi equals ranger's cures in body slot.
Just a couple things to note. If we press 4 on her armor,
increases evasiveness 6%.
says that increases her evasiveness 6%. That's because this is a camouflaged armor, so it makes it harder to hit, and that's reinforced thematically by the description of the armor, which we get by pressing space.
A sturdy leather cuirass dyed green and brown to provide maximum camouflage in the forest.
So there we see it's a camouflaged cuirass, so it's going to make her more evasive. Now if we hit 5 on this one,
restricts magic 10%.
Since this isn't specifically magical gear, it does make it more difficult to cast spells. So that saying that it restricts magic 10%, what that means is that it's going to make spells 10% more expensive for Gwen to cast. So that's something to bear in mind in terms of balance as you're deciding what gear to use. You know, how much are you going to be using spells? How much do you want to restrict those? So you're probably not going to just pile heavy armor on a mage, for example, because that's going to make his spells a lot more expensive. And maybe you will. You're welcome to try it. All right. So that's how we get a general overview. We can look at what's equipped. We can look at details about it. Now, how do we actually change what's equipped? Well, let's say we want to make Gwen into a tank. So we're going to go through all the slots and we're just going to look at what's available to equip, and we're going to try to find what has the highest armor.
Head slot. Equip Gwen at the head 70 months 202.
Hang on a second, I gotta shut up my dog. Sorry about that. Had to go yell at my dog and tell him to stop barking at people walking, I don't know, home from school or something. Okay. Now he's sitting by me whining and acting pathetic. Poor thing. Oh, right. Where are we? Oh, we're on the head slot. So we have 2 pieces of gear we're carrying that can be worn on the head. We've got a leather helmet and a monk's hood. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say the helmet has a higher armor rating. Let's check. Monk's hood.
Armor rating :3. Leather helmet 102. Armor rating :7.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll go ahead and equip that.
Equip Gwen at the head 70. Unequip leather helmet 102.
Actually, you see now the top item, since we have something equipped, is an unequip option. I'm actually going to go ahead and do that.
Unequip 70. Equip Gwen at the head 70. Leather helmet 102.
Because I want to show you something before we do this. So I'm going to exit.
Gwen at the equipment sheet 70. Head slot.
And then exit back to the just regular Explore context. And I want to show you how we can get a quick look at our total defensive rating, what all of our gear is accomplishing. So I'm going to hit tab when in just the regular Explore context, and that's going to put me on a character stats sheet.
Merlin's details 70. Slashing armor: 16.
And it starts me on Merlin's details. Did not start me at the top of the page for some reason, so I'm going to hit home.
Basic stats section 70. Level 1 page.
Alright. I want to tab over to Gwen.
Gwen at the details 70. Level 1 language.
And I'm going to use Control plus the arrow keys to navigate by heading, and I'm going to go down to the heading that says Defensive Stats.
Attributes section. Offensive stats section. Defensive stats section.
And if I arrow down, it's going to report to me her armor rating against different weapon types.
Blunt armor: 34.
So blunt is, you know, clubs and maces and that sort of thing.
Slashing armor: 34.
Slashing is swords, knives, that sort of thing.
Piercing armor: 34.
Piercing, usually arrows. And so right now she has the same against all of them, and it's 34. And obviously, the higher the number, the better. Some gear will actually be stronger against some types of damage than others. It's usually a pretty subtle difference, but it's just a little detail to keep in mind as you're building your character. And we can also go down and see her magic defense.
Magical Defense: 18.
Which is a much lower number than her armor rating, so she's going to do a little bit better against physical attacks right now. The Magical Defense is a combination of your magical gear and your character's willpower, which is an attribute that also governs how much damage they do with spells, and is something you can add points to when you level up. Now, we mentioned weight briefly, and if we go down into the miscellaneous stats, which should be one arrow down.
Miscellaneous stats section 70. Equipment weight: 1.
So the total weight of her equipment right now is 1. And we may change that later on to something more thematic, you know, make it a number of pounds or something like that. I don't know. But what does that mean? Well, we take that number and then we factor in Gwen's agility, which is another attribute you can modify when you level up, and we get a combat speed number.
Combat speed is 9.
And hers is 9. We can compare that to combat speed for other characters and see how she stacks up. So I'm going to tab over to Simeon.
Simeon's is 70. Combat speed is 15.
And Simeon's is 15, so we see the Simeon is a lot faster in combat right now than Gwen. That means he's also going to be harder to hit. Alright, now I wanted to show you that so that we can track the changes with all the new gear we're going to add. So let's go back up and just refresh our memory.
Equipment defensive stats set piercing armor colon 34.
Alright, her armor rating right now is 34.
Merlin's equipment sheet 70 head slot.
I'm opening up the equipment sheet,
Gwen Abrianus' equipment sheet 70 head
tapping over
slot.
to Gwen, selecting the head slot.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' head 70 letter helmet 1 of 2.
I'm going to equip that helmet.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' head 70 unequipped letter helmet 1 of 2.
And now that I'm in one of the specific equip slot, I can just hit tab to go to the next slot on Gwen rather than escaping back to her sort of root equip page. So I'm going to hit tab to go to her body.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' body 70 unequipped equals Ranger's Cures 1 of 6.
We have the Ranger's Cuirass that she's wearing. I can double check the armor rating on that again.
Armor rating colon 15.
15. No magical defense because it's just mundane armor. Doesn't do any good against spells. Alright, let's go down.
Chainmail Brigandine 2 of 6.
Chainmail Brigandine.
Armor rating colon 20.
Is better armor than the Cuirass.
Weight colon average.
It's heavier as well, and if we check how much it restricts magic,
Restricts magic 20%.
20%. But since we're trying to make Gwen into a tank, let's go ahead and do it.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' body 70 unequipped Chainmail Brigandine 1 of 6.
And we equipped that. Moving on to our legs.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' leg 70 unequipped hardened leather greaves 1 of 4.
Hardened leather greaves and quick check.
Canvas pants 2 of 4.
Those aren't going to be better.
Hardened leather greaves 3 of 4.
Those are the same.
Hide greaves 4 of 4.
Hide is not going to be better than hardened leather.
Equip hardened leather greaves.
So we could have checked those numbers, but I just know from the names of the items that they're not going to be stronger. So I'll move on.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' mainline hand 70 unequipped Gwen sword
I'll
1 of
come
6.
back to her weapons.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' offline hand. Equip Gwen Abrianus' amulet 70 congregants pendant 1 of 2.
Amulet. She didn't have one, so we've got the Congregant's Pendant, and we have
Rabbit's foot 2 of 2.
the Rabbit's Foot.
Congregants pendant 1 of 2.
Well, let's check the stats on these.
Magic defense rating colon 4.
The Pendant does a magic defense of 4, which is better than nothing.
Weight colon light.
And since it's light, it doesn't count against her weight total. Let's see if it has any extra effects.
Resist 10% of unholy damage.
So it's also going to make her more resistant against the kind of unholy skills that like dark mages and necromancers and that sort of thing are going to use.
Does not restrict magic.
And of course it doesn't restrict magic 'cause it's a magical item. The Rabbit's Foot
Rabbit's foot 2 of 2. Magic defense rating colon 3.
has a lower magical defense rating, only slightly.
Weight colon light.
Also light.
Does not restrict magic.
Also doesn't restrict magic. Its effects.
Increases accuracy of physical attacks 3%. 70 increases evasiveness colon 3%. 70 increases critical threat colon 3%. 70 increases magic critical threat colon 3%.
So it just it increases some of your sort of luck-based skills a little bit. That's a lucky Rabbit's Foot. But I think we're gonna go with the higher magical defense rating on that
Congregants pendant 1 of 2.
and equip that.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' amulet 70 unequipped congregants pendant 1 of 2.
Alright, moving on to her rings.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' ring line 170 unequipped sorcerer's ring of shielding 1 of 4.
Ring of Shielding, which if we check, that's already
Armor rating colon 8.
got an armor rating of 8. Rings are a great way to get armor or magical defense without any like extra weight. Let's check what other rings we have.
Sorcerer's ring of shielding 2 of 4.
Another Sorcerer's Ring of Shielding.
Sorcerer's ring of shielding 3 of 4.
Another one.
Sorcerer's ring of shielding 4 of 4.
And another one.
Unequipped sorcerer's ring of shielding 1 of 4.
Okay. Well, that's easy.
Equip Gwen Abrianus' ring line 270 unequipped spellcaster's ring of warding 1 of 4.
Her last ring is a Spellcaster's Ring of Warding, which we check. That's
Magic defense rating colon 6.
sort of a similar idea to the Ring of Shielding, but it's protecting against magic. And if we check its other effects with 4.
Resist magic critical hits colon 12%.
It also helps guard against magic critical hits. But since we're making Gwen into a physical tank, we're going to give her
Sorcerer's Ring of Shielding 2 of 4.
another Ring of Shielding.
Equip Gwen at Rihanna's Ring Line 2 Semi. Unequip Sorcerer's Ring of Shielding 1 of 4.
Okay. Now, if I hit escape,
Gwen at Rihanna's equipment sheet Semi. Letter helmet and head slot.
takes me back to Gwen's equipment sheet. Hit escape again. I'm in the Explore context. I can hit tab
Merlin's Detail Semi. Slashing Armor colon 6.
and tab again. When I hit tab again, it's going to bring us to Gwen's stats section. Now we remember that her armor against all 3 damage types was 34. Let's see how it is now.
Gwen at Rihanna's Detail Semi. Piercing Armor colon 58. Slashing Armor colon 58.
Slashing and
58.
piercing armor 58.
Magical Defense colon 17. Piercing Armor colon 58.
Forgot blunt.
Slashing Armor. Blunt Armor colon 50.
And her blunt armor is 50. So she's got a much higher armor rating against everything. And you notice that the slash and piercing are a little bit higher. I believe that's because the Chainmail Brigandine isn't quite as good against blunt weapons. Word to the wise, getting hit by a club when you're wearing chainmail just makes those little pieces of metal dig into your skin. Not very comfortable. Alright, so Gwen's obviously much more of a tank now, but that comes with a cost. Her magic casting abilities are going to be much more restricted now, so any spells she casts are going to cost more. Also, she's a lot more weighed down. When we last looked, her weight was 1, and her combat speed was 9. Let's check it now.
Miscellaneous stats section. Equipment weight colon 2.
Alright, so a lot of what we equipped was light, so it didn't count against her, but we did equip some heavier armor.
Combat speed is 8.
It knocks her combat speed down another point. So that's an intro to armor. What about weapons? Well, let's go back to our equipment sheet.
Merlin's equipment sheet Semi.
And let's go over to Simeon, who's our newest addition to our team.
Gwen at Rihanna's equipment sheet. Simeon's equipment sheet Semi. Head slot.
I'll go down to his main hand.
Simeon's canvas pants and let Simeon's dagger in main hand slot.
So Simeon's wielding his own personal dagger and
Offhand slot.
nothing in his offhand slot. Alright, so I'm going to open up
Simeon's dagger in main hand slot.
his main hand slot to compare my options.
Equip Simeon's main line hand Semi. Unequip Simeon's dagger 106. Unequip Simeon's dagger 106.
We've got his dagger, which, just like pressing 1 gives us the armor rating for armor, it'll give us the weapon rating for a weapon.
Weapon rating colon 12.
And
Weight colon effortless.
the weight is effortless, which means unlike a light item that doesn't count against you, effortless items actually sort of lighten your load because they're very light, very easy to use. And does his dagger have any special effects?
Increases critical threat colon 2%.
Okay, so it gives you just a very slight chance of dealing more critical attacks. What do I have anything else I want to use in my main
Matthews' regular bow 206.
We could equip a bow. I'm not going to have Simon be an archer.
Steel battle axe 306.
Battle axe.
Steel dagger 406.
Steel dagger. Let's check that out.
Weapon rating colon 15.
Okay, so it does more damage than Simeon's dagger.
Weight colon effortless.
Same weight.
Increases critical threat colon 5%.
And better critical threat, or critical bonus.
Steel greatsword 506.
We've also got a steel greatsword.
Steel longsword 606.
A steel longsword. Alright, well that dagger sounds like an obvious improvement.
Steel dagger 406.
So let's equip that.
Equip Simeon's main line hand Semi. Unequipped.
Now if I tab over to his offhand, since a dagger is a one-handed weapon, we have the ability to equip his offhand, and this will only show things that are able to be used in the offhand.
Equip Simeon's offline hand Semi. Simeon's dagger 103.
So we could actually equip his dagger in his second hand. What else?
Leather shield 203.
Leather shield. Hey, we should give that to Gwen,
Simeon's equipped.
since we want her to be a tank.
Gwen at Rihanna's equipment sheet Semi. Gwen sword in main hand slot. Offhand slot. Equip Gwen at Rihanna's offline hand Semi. Leather shield. Initiates. Leather shield 2. Equip Gwen at Rihanna's offline hand Semi.
And voila, she has a shield.
Gwen at Rihanna's.
Back to Simeon.
Simeon's equipment sheet Semi. Offhand slot. Equip Simeon's offline hand Semi. Simeon's dagger 1 of 2.
We could either give him his dagger
Simeon's staff 2 of 2.
or a staff. Well, he's not a magic user, so dagger.
Simeon's dagger. Equip Simeon's offline hand.
So now Simeon has 2 daggers, and You're a little less accurate when you're dual wielding, but you also have the potential to do more damage since you've got both of those weapons.
Steel dagger in main hand slot.
Well, maybe I decide I don't want Simeon to use daggers.
Equip Simeon's main line hand semi. Unequip steel.
I said I wanted him to be... Didn't want him to use a bow. Well, I've changed my mind.
Matthias is Raker bow 2 of 5.
Let's actually equip this bow since Matthias isn't with us. He's not using it.
Equip Simeon's main line hand semi. Unequip Matthias is Raker bow 1.
Now what you'll notice, if I go back to Simeon's main equip menu
Simeon's equipment.
and go down to his offhand,
Offhand slot.
that dagger got unequipped. And that's because a bow, if you think about it, it takes 2 hands to use. So he can't have that dagger equipped. And in fact, if I open up the offhand equip menu
Equip Simeon's offline hand semi. Simeon's dagger 1 of 3.
and try to equip a dagger,
You cannot equip the off dash hand while wielding a 2 dash hand weapon.
it'll tell me I can't. Alright,
Simeon's equipment sheet semi. Offhand slot.
so that's, I guess, a general overview of your equipment. Now, that's a way that you can just check out your equipment as you're in the process of equipping it all, which is probably the most convenient way to do it with weapons and armor. But there are other items you can pick up that aren't equipable. So rather than going to my equipment menu, now I'm just going to go to my total inventory with Control I.
Inventory semi. Simeon's dagger 1 of 24.
And that puts me on a list of every item I'm carrying. However, to make things easier, we can also tab to pages with specific categories. So I'm going to tab
Armor semi. Canvas pants 1 of 7.
armor. We already looked at that.
Weapon semi. Simeon's dagger 1 of 5.
Weapons we looked at.
Magical apparel semi. Blend clothes 1 of 8.
Magical apparel we looked at.
Potions and food semi. Diluted poison of numbers 5 of 5.
Potions and food. So these aren't equipable, but they're certainly useful.
Weak potion of greater healing 1 of 5.
And we've got some potions.
Weak potion of greater respite 2 of 5.
Healing, respite,
2 weak potion of healing 3 of 5.
more healing.
3 weak potion of sorcery 4 of 5.
Sorcery. Just like with, as we said, this is pretty universal. We can hit number keys to get info. So this potion
Restores 20 mana.
restores 20 mana.
Value 12.
Value of 12.
Restores 20 mana. Diluted poison of numbers 5 of 5.
And we also have a poison here. Let's see what that
Damages target dexterity
poison
semi
does.
20% chance.
Sorry, I was talking over that.
Damages target dexterity semi 20% chance.
So, there's a 20% chance when I attack with this poison to damage a target's dexterity. Well, how do I use that? I'm going to select that poison,
Poison with units weapon semi Simeon.
and I get to choose to poison a unit's weapon. And that means the next time I attack after poisoning this weapon, if the attack hits, I have that chance of dealing the poison effect. And you can poison weapons in combat or poison them before combat. That way you aren't wasting a turn in combat doing it. Let's try and poison
Merlin. Gwen Adriana's.
Gwen's weapon. She's probably going to be our heavy hitter.
This won't do any good.
This won't do any good. I wonder why. After all, Gwen has a weapon. Well, if I hit, I think it's 4. Just like in combat, you can hit 4 or maybe 5. We'll see. One of those numbers will tell you what weapons a unit's carrying.
Gwen Adriana's armor colon semi leather helmet semi.
No, that's telling me her armor. Alright, 5.
Gwen Adriana's wields Gwen sword semi. Weapon is poison.
So it tells us that her weapon is already poisoned. So,
Simeon.
I'll check Simeon.
Simeon wields Matthias' Raker bow.
Not poisoned, so I'll use that on him.
Merlin uses diluted poison of numbers on Simeon semi. Potions and food.
And
3 weak potion
now
of greater healing.
his weapon is poisoned. Well, that's about all there is to say about gear, defensive stats, the different statistics on your gear. So I hope that was educational. As always, we're happy to answer any questions, and we'll catch you next time.